both. It's holy company and active public participation, both being in tune with God, are both spiritual life.
You have to repeat the question for the sake of this.
In spiritual life, we're required to keep holy company, but we also have to live within our community or the society we're in. So we're not always going to be in people that are interested in any spiritual area. We can tune into God best we can, but is holy company and active living in the community, are they both spiritual life?
All right. See, we have this propensity that says that spiritual life and secular life should be separate. Spiritual life is for Sundays, and the rest of the day is for other activities. You become spiritual, you go to church or whatever it is on Sunday, or Muslims who go to the mosque on Friday, something like that. Supposing you are instructed to have some kind of daily spiritual activity, Sunday or something like that, then what you do is you become spiritual from 5 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the morning, and the rest, your life is just like anybody else's. Well, then what's the use of it? So the idea of regular spiritual practice is that it carries through over into your daily activity. It acts as a kind of battery. The quality of your private life. You see, now Sri Ramakrishna gives us 4 things, one of which is holy company, but the other is from time to time go into solitude. What do we mean from time to time? Well, ideally, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, maybe a week. That's why we have retreats. We want retreats probably minimum 4 times a year. But then you have the opportunity in the early morning and the late evening. So your instruction normally is a minimum of twice daily. Your own holy company is the company of you in a small private space. In Jesus' language, pray, go into your closet to pray. See, in contrast to going into anybody can go into, in his day, the synagogue, and go up in the front and look around. And there are people watching me to see how spiritual I am. See, I am spiritual. See. Not only that, me, I am humble. Well, there's nothing humble about that. Like a politician saying, in my humble opinion, well, there's nothing humble about a politician's opinion. We know that from current politics in America. So your spiritual life, in other words, your daily spiritual practice, regular spiritual practice, should be of such a quality that it floods your so-called secular life. Why do you say so-called secular life? Because why are we here is a question. Why are we born? Is there some enduring purpose in life? If there's no enduring purpose in life, there's no point of any spiritual practice whatsoever. There is an enduring purpose in life. If in the very depths of your being, there is a divine essence that is permanent, that doesn't change, that is enduring, that is infinite, that is of the highest bliss, then when we look for bliss and its diluted form of happiness in the external world, we won't find it there. We can get it very easily. In fact, in studying this Bhagavad doing from week to week, we can see that it is easy to get any object in the world. We just have to apply our intention. And our thought is arranged in such a way that if we have a strong desire for something, the deities, that is, all the elemental forces of nature, arrange themselves suitably and bring us what we want. But our difficulty is, while it's easy to get, it's not satisfactory. It doesn't last for very long, for a few moments, and then it's gone. And there's no end to the desire because there's no end to a search for happiness. Why? Because it's tantamount to searching for our own nature, which is eternal bliss. But we misunderstand it, we mistake it. So any activity in life if we have an enduring purpose, that is, if we have an enduring nature, and the purpose of life is to discover that, then every activity, if we really understand that, every activity is driven toward it. In other words, every activity is spiritual. Every activity should be toward that. There's no holiday for it. The heart pumps, there's no holiday for it. It doesn't ring a bell in the morning and say, look, for nearly 70 years I've been pumping your heart. I've decided, here's my notice, I'll go to the Bahamas today. I deserve a holiday. It doesn't do it. So in spiritual life, there's no holiday for it. Why? Because it requires attention. It requires watchfulness. It requires observation. What is the condition of the mind at any given time? Now, if you find yourself in company which is not entirely holy, then what to do? Finding yourself in that position, think about it. Did you create that situation for yourself? Supposing I tell you that every thought shapes your external world with people and places and events, then the fact that there is an attractive force that comes from the unconscious mind is an attractive force. It draws things toward you. It is a magnetic kind of thing. So what are you drawing to yourself? That's a question you need to ask. What is the condition of the mind that attracts such a thing to you? Never mind, if it's there in the environment, then you have to be selective. You have to understand that people are at least three classes. People who are of highly sattvic temperament. That is, full of generosity, full of purity, not 100%, but that dominates. This is what we call holy company. People, like-minded people. Why do we gather here? Because like-minded people. There's a misunderstanding, of course, that these talks on Tuesdays, and the misunderstanding will be dispelled when you understand we're broadcasting it to the world. The misunderstanding is, if you want to be a member of the Vedanta Society, you're entitled to come here. No, your membership of the Vedanta Society entitles you to the highest service of God and the highest service to humanity. That's what your membership involves. It's not that you become a member to get some benefit. Your benefit will come, of course. But it's to have a generosity of spirit which says, I buy into, as it were, I align my intention with the noble intentions of Vedanta Society to propagate this news of freedom to everybody. May the whole world be free. May the whole world be full of bliss. May the whole world be happy. That should be our intention. So in an environment where you find various deleterious elements that takes your mind away from your central objective, be it described in the language of truth, be it described in the language of God, anything that takes you away, you should avoid. And there are many practical ways of doing it. We don't have to respond to somebody who's not of sattvic temperament. Now, the other two classes will be there. Most people have a rajasic temperament. Rajas dominates. They're kind of go-getter. That's better than being lazy. So in business, you're encouraged to do that. So many courses are available. Tony Robinson and all these people will say, let us now make sure that we have set goals, drive yourself toward that, and make yourself successful. And that's much better than sitting and pondering, oh, poor me, poor me, poor me, to the extent, tomorrow, poor me again, I think, the next day, tomorrow, at 7 o'clock, I'll commit suicide. It's much better to take yourself out of it, called occupational therapy. But we have to understand that all action, unless it's of a sattvic variety, will be binding on us. See, any action that does not have this generosity of spirit, does not have this attunement Any action which is done in order to get a result. Why? Because to get a result for who? For me. And this idea of I and mine and agency, active profit complex, is the key thing that is stopping us. That's the key obstacle that we have. Try to resolve for myself. And it too. Oh, why are you doing this ritual? Why are you attending any kind of church? Or why are you saying prayers? You ask somebody, they might say, well, don't you know, if I don't do that, I won't get to heaven. The kind of post-mortem holiday camp where we enjoy something or other. Depending on your culture, it will be described in different ways. So Muhammad in the desert will describe it as an oasis because water is very precious in a desert. You don't have flowers and flora and fauna unless you have water. The things you don't have, these things they'll give you in heaven. You put your order in here today, and afterwards you'll get it on the other side. You won't get it now. Well, why not? Why shouldn't you get it now? Why shouldn't you get it here and now? So Vedanta doesn't look at it that way. It starts off by saying, your true nature is much deeper than that. It's like a deep ocean. It's like an ocean of bliss. The fulfillment is here. The fulfillment is now. Things are in the way. Try to remove them. So we have to deal with anything that is in our way. We have to evaluate everything from the point of view, is it preventing me from my evolution? What do we mean by evolution? Unfolding to the extent that we come back to our own true nature, that we come back to what is intrinsically within us. We get back to it in a kind of cyclical way. If you explain it to a child, you'll say, life is a journey, enjoy the ride. We come from God and we go to God. You can say that to your children. We come from God, we go back to God. That is our home. Manu Charo, that song, says, oh my mind, see, why do you dwell in this foreign land? Why don't you go home? So that famous story is there, which by now you probably know. And variously, sometimes people say Indra, sometimes they say Vishnu. Let's say Vishnu. Vishnu came down, as it were, descended as an avatar. Descent means to save humanity from a demon, a huge boar. And of course, if you go and attack a boar and try to understand a boar, you yourself will have to be a boar. I don't mean a boar that puts you to sleep. I mean something like a living, moving pork, you see, a pig. So you become a pig and you do your job. But of course, in this whole drama, Vishnu forgot. And so he was quite happy being a pig. He married a Mrs. Pig and had many piglets and was happy to roam around and romp around in the mud. If you ever saw a pigsty, you'll know what I mean. And some people's offices are like that. We call it a pigsty, but there's a proper pigsty with all kinds of smelly things, quite happily, because the nose is adjusted to it. You see, you like doing that. I like that. All that mess and all that, mud and all that excrement is there. And since the whole family is doing it, we're all very happy. What's your aim? We eat anything we possibly can and roll about in excrement and mud. Doesn't matter how you smell, because everyone else is smelling like you. So you'll be immune to it. Now, of course, the co-deities, Brahman, Vishnu, and Shiva, were a little worried. And all the deities in heaven were worried because Vishnu, where is Vishnu? He needs to govern the universe. See, without Vishnu being awake, the universe comes to a standstill because he pervades the whole universe and makes everything run. So, through their divine intuition, they came and spoke to him. Oh, Vishnu, Vishnu, my brother, what are you doing? Well, I am a pig. But what are you doing? Well, I'm leading a life, rolling around enjoying myself. Life is good. You see, life is good, life is fine, but you smell so bad. I never noticed it. And look, I have a Mrs. Pig and so many piglets, and we're all enjoying it. And the food that arrives is magnificent. So convinced that he was a pig, he spent some time. Ultimately, Shiva with his trident had to kill the pig body, and thereafter Vishnu was released. What happened? What happened? You are a pig. Look, here's your cosmic vision. Look, see. Was that me? Yes. Roaming around like that? Yes. In that smelly stuff? Yes. Oh, thank you. So we're all like that, you see. Our glory is unending, but we limit ourselves, and we put ourselves in this limited way. How to get out of it? It's not easy. Why? Because the truth and the fiction are all mixed up. The whole of life has only these three evolutionary forces: goodness and purity and love, sattva. Something that is light, something is shining, something that is full of noble qualities. And then this Rajasic temperament that says we have to be concerned about results. We have to always be doing, active all the time in order to get some result. And that creates, it's a life of anxiety if you have that dominant tendency. And then there are the tamasic variety that are very dull. So we have to try and associate with sattvic people, and we have to understand rajasic people are okay. We have to employ a little rajas ourselves to operate. Don't forget, sattva dominates. It doesn't mean we have to be 100% sattva. Salvation is 51% sattva or purity, 49% others, minimum. It's much better if you have more, but minimum, that's the requirement. Make the mind in such a way that it is predominantly of a pure nature. And then the tamasic people will be indolent, lazy, ignorant. And you'll find this in all religions as well, because people are involved in religions. You'll find that type, which is a mystical type. They want to know the spiritual dimension of religion. They take their spiritual practice seriously. They go inward introspectively. They are mystics. They are practical philosophers. They know the truth. They live the truth. Their words and their thoughts and their deeds, they all match. So they exhibit it in their outward life. You can see straight away. And then you dress in a smart suit. I'm not saying all people do that, but I'm giving you an image. Dress in a smart suit, yeah, smarter the better, yeah. And then back erect. Then, of course, if you want to do business, no good you being smart. Your car also has to be smart. So you take a Mercedes-Benz, and then you wonder, how will I pay for this? And so on. Never mind about that. The image is important, you see. And then you go, you see, and your nose is in the air because you think you're better than the other person. And so it is. Oh, that person, they must be very successful. They drive a Mercedes-Benz, and they dress so smartly. Now it's a mindset. It's not how you do it. People can dress smartly and also be sattvic. But it's what is behind it. What is the motivation behind it? Those don't mind because they're lazy. And two extremes always look the same. The person who doesn't care, of a sattvic type, is detached from all these things. And the person who is of a tamasic type is intrinsically attached and is full of darkness, and he looks inactive himself. This is action and inaction being described. And so the mind is divided in these ways. So that kind of person in your environment, you deal with kindly. In any event, you see the truth in the other person, because behind all the gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, lies Atman. Atman, the glory of the self, the Lord of the universe, the intrinsic divinity within. Every entity has that within them. And so to have a penetrating vision to get there is the important thing. That has a transforming effect. You get the idea. Now, as your unconscious mind becomes reformed, as your habit level becomes infiltrated and saturated with purity, then naturally this will be an attractive force and all these good things will come to you. And even if they don't, you'll have a sufficient penetrating vision to see the goodness in all beings. That is the practical Vedanta philosophy, and that leads naturally to spontaneous service, worship of God, the downtrodden, worship of God, the uneducated, worship of God, the depressed. Now we have been studying the Bhagavad Gita all these weeks, and so we start off with that first chapter where a person is suffering. He's not physically suffering. He's not suffering from any depravity of possessions or wealth. He's royalty. But nevertheless, suffering psychologically from unsettlement, from stress. Any different from anybody today? Physical suffering can cause you mental stress also. Where will the next meal come from? My child is suffering. How will I feed my child? A person without a job, it will reflect as mental suffering too, anxiety. Somebody who is experiencing any kind of bereavement in life will be suffering, psychologically suffering, emotionally suffering. Anybody who is rich and famous will be suffering. They will be suffering more psychologically. Why? Because they invest more energy in trying to be happy from the outside through possessions. And the internal understanding of their own status quo, what will people think of me? If you're a model or a film star today, then physical looks is very important. It's your whole livelihood. But what is the mental state of somebody like that? See? So you'll find many so-called positive thinking processes. So in order to love somebody else, you must love yourself. What do they mean by yourself? They mean the physical layer self. So what's the recommendation? Somebody with poor, low self-image, stand in front of a mirror and say, you look so good. How handsome you look today. See? Never mind about the wrinkles and the gray hairs and all that. See? So being short-sighted helps in this exercise also.
That's true.
You're placed on a physical image because of an identification that says, I am this, what Sri Ramakrishna describes as pillowcase. Just a pillowcase. What is the physical body? It's just a pillowcase. Well, a pillowcase contains something inside it. And he physically felt it. I feel like a pillowcase. And wherever I look, another pillowcase, so many pillowcases for what's inside. Why should we look after the body? He says, because it's like a jewel box. It's nicely decorated. Why? Because something precious, some precious jewel sits inside. If there wasn't a precious jewel inside, then the box can be any box. It can be a cardboard box. See? Well, today, everything is precious because such elaborate packaging. You buy something this size, and you have to unpack it. Then there's another layer. Sometimes you need instructions how to get into the initial plastic layer. It's very tough. And then what becomes of that plastic, that's another story. So this whole subject is dealt with here, and we've been studying the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And so briefly, Kangashanta karmanam siddhim yajanta hiha devataha Shipram hi manuse loge siddhir bhavati karma ja. Longing for success in action on earth. They worship the deities. That means all the cosmic elemental forces responsible for getting what you want, organizing themselves into the materialism that we see. For quickly a success born of action in this world of man, to get any result is easy. But to get something deeper, devotion, wisdom, salvation, such like gifts come to the worshipper of God. The others are worshipping all the other deities. That means all the elemental forces. The glories of God, which are expressed, we bypass. We bypass their origin and their expression, and we deem them entities in themselves. So anything comes to the worshipper essentially of God, because that's all God's glory is expressed in this way. So votaries of the minor deities get their deserts accordingly. You express it like that. Pray to a deity of wealth, for example. You can pray to Lakshmi. Instead of taking Lakshmi as the divine mother of the entire universe, you take her as a deity exclusively dedicated to giving you wealth and success. Their deserts accordingly, they get. Ideals vary. But how are we to know of the attainments of people? And then it goes on. Because all the mental condition, all the desires that you have expressed is in three ways, because of these three evolutionary forces which are there of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, gunas, that bind you. How is it that Vishnu misunderstood that he was a pig? Because he was caught up in a network, in a coordination of forces that we call gunas. And the whole of nature is just a combination of these three elements. Now they are explained, therefore, in a system called Varna, and we can call that caste. Now today, there's so much criticism about caste. But we have to go back to the original text to find out what is meant by caste. For any society to function properly, 4 components are necessary. And these components are related to these 3 gunas. So let's have a look at them. For society to function correctly, there must be self-denying people. People who are completely selfless. People who have a spirit of service. People who want to teach in this modern day. People who are nurses, doctors, teachers of all kinds. That's the modern version of it. Do we find it today? Sometimes not. What do we find today? We find teachers, school teachers, who take it up as a career and want more wages. When I first arrived in Ireland, the first acquaintances that I had was a school teacher. So she said, "Oh, we're going on a demonstration in the city for more wages. Won't you join us?" I said, "Well, I don't really do those kinds of things." So you should learn about our culture. No harm, come and do it. So sheepishly I went along. I was delighted because they were demonstrating for more wages, but they all were so happy. And they had a ceilidh at the end of it. So all with signs, you give us more wages, more wages, more wages. Very happy. In contrast to that, in Zimbabwe, we couldn't do that at all. I was so delighted with the freedom of it. I went and shook them by facilitating this. They had a very puzzled look on their face because we didn't have that privilege in Zimbabwe. So these people are looking for more wages. Yes, a living wage must be there, no doubt. But should there not be people who have a generosity, a generous spirit of service, people who are dedicated to social life of people, without any aspect of reward or any requirement for a reward? Should there not be people like that? People of the highest caliber like that. So creation is effaced, is affected by variation in the distribution of these 3 qualities. And so we have here, Chatu Varnyam Maya Satyam Gunakarma Vibhagatha Tasya Kartaram Api Mam Vidya Kartaram Avyayam. Four castes were created by me. Lest you make a mistake, create in what sense? Is the Lord active? No. Already we found the Lord doesn't appear to act. We bypass a lot of these difficulties by introducing a word, appears to be, like that. How does the Lord act? Appears to act through the functioning of Maya. Though I am the author, so distribution of guna and karma, though I am the author, know me to be the actionless and changeless. There it is, lest you misunderstood. Just being there, being present, things revolve. So when we see the dominance of various things, let's take, for example, the Brahmana. The Sattva Guna should dominate in the Brahmana. But who supports the Brahmana? You must have some kind of administration, some civil service, some people who are military-minded. So you have to have Kshatriya. And what do you think will dominate the Kshatriya? Well, Sattva and Rajas have to combine together. It's no good just having Rajas. There must be some element of social understanding, civic understanding. We're extremely lucky in this country whereby the defense forces, or I should say the Garda, the police, have got a community-centered orientation, community-orientated. And then the third rank, the bulk of people will have to be wealth earners. There's no point in having wealth or earners if they are not the go-getter type who want to get a result. That's necessary. Goal-orientated and looking for rewards. The wealth producers must be there in industry and commerce. That has to be there. But how do they find themselves there? They find themselves there because of this quality of predominantly Rajasic temperament. And Sattva and Tamas will be there. All of these will be there anyway. But what will dominate? Rajasic temperament. And then, of course, the Shudra is there. That is the unskilled labor. Has to be there. And that person, Tamas, of course, which is regulated by Rajas, will have to be there. So Tamasic temperament will be at the foreground. Now that is why it is. It is nothing to do with hereditary, because in the same family you'll find it. People of these different temperaments. That's the difference between this Varna system. And Varna means a color, you see. So it doesn't mean literally color. See, in interpreting these Shastras, we have to be careful. Because you see, all these colors, these gunas are attributed or designated with a color. So we find, you see, that Sattva will be white. Well, if all the white people are Sattvic, then all the Europeans will be saved. But that we don't find it, see. And then Rajasic will be red. Well, if that were the case, then all the Native American Indians will be of the Rajasic type, you see. So it goes on. And then, of course, all the Tamasic type will be black. So all the black people in Africa and so on and so forth will all be lazy and so on. No, not at all. We want like that. So the worth of man is in the mind and not in the body. The mind has its coloring according to the guna, the quality. And so the worldly man's classification of himself into the four castes based on birth and parentage is just a social convention built up over the years and has no meaning in what Krishna is saying here. We have to make sure that that's the case. Now, of course, these actions of these four are described. They're aptly described in chapter 18, the last chapter. Stanzas 42 to 44 will tell us a little bit more information about it. And so we find serenity, self-restraint, austerity, purity, forgiveness, also uprightness, knowledge, realization, belief in a hereafter. These are the duties of the Brahmanas, born of their own nature. Then what about Kshatriya? heroism, vigor, firmness, resourcefulness, not fleeing from battle or not fleeing from your duty, generosity and lordliness, otherwise you'll be an oppressor of people, or the duties of the kshatriya or the military caste or the administrators, born of their own nature. And then agriculture, in the old days, cattle rearing. So agriculture, not only agriculture, but also husbandry as well, and trade. These are the duties of the Vaishyas. Vaishyas, what we call in modern parlance, industry, commerce, and agriculture. And this is born of their own nature. The action consisting of service is the duty of the Shudras, born of their own nature. And each one has a role in the harmonious structure and development and enactment of the social life. So, should we avoid the Shudra? No. Should we avoid the Vaishya? No. Should we see the divine arrangement in it? Yes. But we have to ourselves have that kind of attitude. We have to have that understanding. Otherwise, we'll be unnecessarily avoiding all kinds of people, which is impossible in today's world. Even when you go into the street or go into the shopping, there'll be people of all kinds of temperaments. There'll be people who, at the till, will want to push you out of the way. There will be people who say, oh, you have only one or two items, please go first. See? There'll be people who stand there and say, no, I won't budge from here, this is my place. There are all kinds of temperaments that you find. That's why we introduce this whole subject through this personality development, this Enneagram and Essence of Truth, to find out what is the particular type of person. And they will all fall in either predominantly Sattva, predominantly Rajas, or predominantly Tamas. And we'll have to announce when the next workshop is so that you can take advantage of that. So we'll come back to our subject matter.
What's the five, Swamiji? What's five predominantly?
The question is meaningless in this context because nobody knows what five is and so on. All right? Yeah. You're asking a question that is being broadcast everywhere throughout the world and has no meaning for the vast majority of people. So we leave that as a private question answer. Okay? Anyhow, so now the Lord has already said that they are actionless and changeless in this whole thing. And so where will we find? We'll find in chapter 9 of this a greater description of the actionless aspect of the Lord. And we see here how Krishna alternates and changes, shifted the point of view, and we also have to get used to shifting our point of view alternately. So, Nacha matstani bhutani pasya me yogam aishwaram, nor do the beings dwell in me, behold my divine yoga. See, display of Maya, yoga Maya, bringing forth and supporting the beings. Myself does not dwell in them. That's one aspect. Shift this. As the mighty wind moving everywhere ever rests in ether or space or Rasha, know you that so do all beings rest in me. All beings go into my nature, my prakriti. At the end of a cycle, I generate them again at the beginning of the next cycle. And animating my prakriti, my nature, I send forth again and again all this multitude of beings, helpless under the regime of prakriti from nature. Nor do these acts bind me, who remain like one unconcerned, unattached to these acts. You get the idea. See, it's a bit like a generator, a dynamo, you see. a bar standing there and coils moving around it. The presence of the magnet activates the coils, as it were, that kind of image. So the proximity of the Lord, or in yogic language, the proximity of the Purusha, activates the Prakriti. So we find Namam Karmani Limpanti Name Karma Pale Spraha Iti Mam Yo Bijanati Karma Bhye Nasa Bhadyati. Nor do actions taint me, nor action desired by me. We're not bound by any actions. How do we release ourselves from being bound by any actions? Know this, that actions do not taint that supreme entity, that divine entity which is within you and which is present everywhere. They don't taint that entity. No more than our pollution taints the sun. It doesn't. We can blow ourselves up, the sun remains. It'll beam anyway. We can increase our global warming and make this planet uninhabitable, but the sun will just continue to shine. Nor is the fruit of action desired by me. There's no motive. Why did God create the world? Did he want something? See, there's the old story. One person will argue, supposing God and you come to an insurmountable river and you decide, let us go across. Then the Lord will say, well, I'll construct a bridge. Me being a divine designer, intelligent designer, I'll construct a bridge. Me being a supreme engineer with a desire to get to the other side. Is that the kind of God that makes any sense? Not at all. Having a river that seems insurmountable, instantaneously we're on the other side. Just the thought about it will put you on the other side, isn't it? Omniscient God will do that. Not omniscience in the sense, I know all engineering skills. Yeah. But omniscience in the sense that the other side is already known to me. Therefore I'm there and linked with omnipresence. Here one moment, seems like a moment to you, but instantaneously we're on the other side. Now there's something, of course, in quantum physics that gives us a sense of instantaneous action. This is called quantum entanglement. Two particles having met each other nicely, you separate them at any distance, infinite distance, and you change one, say a spin characteristic, and the other one instantaneously changes, and this we know for a fact. Einstein didn't like it, so he brought up what's called the EPR paradox, but he was found to be wrong. So one of the few occasions when Einstein was wrong. And so we know instantaneously it has that effect. Doesn't that suggest some kind of interconnectedness? No travel necessary, no speed of light necessary, no traveling necessary, no agency necessary, no locality necessary, no time necessary, no space necessary. Imagine. So this is one of the great mysteries of modern physics, how this can take place. And you're left with only one possibility that Einstein had, a hidden variable somewhere, but you don't find it. So no desire is there, and he who knows me thus, is not bound by any actions whatsoever. Know that there's an eternal thing in you. And so those people who know the actionless of the Lord, will they neglect their duty? And so the Lord deals with it in the next point. So he says, Ivam yadva kritam karma puve api mumokshuphi guru karmeva tasmattum purvai purvataram kritam. They also did action. Therefore, you perform action, as did your ancient people in olden times. You can't say, I'm intrinsically actionless and therefore have no need to act. And why is this? Because the knowing aspirant doesn't abandon action, they abandon agency. They give up egoism, the sense of I'm the doer, and they give up desire. No desire and no egoism. No sense of profit to me, and no sense of I do this, I'm the actor. That is what you have to overcome. Not action. Action you leave. Same action you perform. It's only no egoism, no self-centeredness, no selfishness in you, and no desire for any profit. And of course, that has been enunciating earlier in all the other chapters of Bhagavad Gita. So why do you think Arjun, because it's a well-known fact, why do you think he's still confused on this issue? Nothing strange in it, already taught before. Now we come on to a subject then, which is philosophy of action. And this is the nub of what our subject was tonight. What is the philosophy of action? How can we act in such a way that it is strategically placed to keep us free? Kim karma kim akarme te kavaya pyatra mohitaha tatte karma pravakshyami yajñatva mokshashe subhati. Sages, they also were perplexed by this question. Even wise thinking people were perplexed by this question. Don't feel alone in this. As to what is action, what is inaction. Very often people ask me, to what extent do we see this confusion that says, this is Samsara, this is a world I'm familiar with, I don't find any meaning in it, and then I work till 5 o'clock. Oh, I have my lunch, and then I work till 5 o'clock. Yeah. And then I go home, sounds reasonable. And then I sit down, and then what? I'm so tired, I watch the television. And then what? I fall asleep. And then what? I go to bed. And then what? I wake up in the morning. And then what? I go to work. And then what? It just repeats every day. Except for someone, when I decide that I'll change my color to red and go to Spain or something like that. See? And then I get a reprieve from it. But life is so humdrum, life is boring. I want something new. So you have to change your outlook. It need not be like that. You have to learn this art, this philosophy of action or work. So what is this evil that is being spoken of? It is the thing which seems against you, or an immoral sense. The fact that we are caught up seemingly in some kind of wheel. And it expresses itself with some people as life is humdrum, routine, day by day, no interesting thing taking place, nothing new, same old, same old. When I was younger, I wished I could do this, and now that was all gone. And see, even the tone of voice there. All right. So it's, in short, philosophically, this is called samsara. It's a wheel of birth, life, death, birth, life, death. And not only do you repeat this birth, life, death in this life, and it equates to waking, dream, dream to sleep, waking, dream, dream to sleep, waking, dream, dream to sleep, but also in terms of birth, life, death, birth, life, death, birth, life, death. How do we get out of this and get some meaning and some joy? And so we find it changes here. It is needful to discriminate action. Karmano hi api bodhyavyam cha vikarmanaha akarmanas cha bodhavyam gohana karmano gatihi. It is needful to discriminate action, to discriminate forbidden action and discriminate inaction. Inscrutable is the way of karma. 3 types of action is laid out here. What is it? Forbidden action. Forbidden action is action that will harm ourselves and intrinsically will also harm others will harm everybody. Everybody includes me. So action which is intrinsically rajasic and tamasic will be harmful. And we have to find out what is that. We have to, in our activity, find out what is hurting us and what is freeing us, giving us some enduring joy. And then to discriminate inaction, the opposite. The opposite is inaction. Inaction is a tricky one. We'll come on to that now. And inscrutable is the way of this karma. So what are all the Shastras advocating is auspicious work. This is action. And what they prohibit, all scriptures will tell you, you should do this, you should not do that. All those things that you should not do are harmful, inauspicious work. And this is described as forbidden action. But the forbidden action isn't exactly dealt with here. And it's elaborately, we have to wait for chapter 16 and 17 to find out this distinction between good action, bad action, and so on. But the characteristics of action and inaction are this. And this is one of the most profound and most commentated of the texts here, the stanzas. So it's a very famous one. Karmaniya karma ya pashyat akarmani cha karma ya sabodhimam manusheshu sayuktaha kritsna karma. He who sees inaction, and action in inaction, he is wise among men. Now, if you really want to be a scholar, you'll repeat this as rapidly as possible. Okay? And see how tongue-twisting you get. He is a yogi and accomplisher of everything. What is inaction? Inaction is essentially your own nature, yogic language, Purusha. Purusha is a double term derived from Purna and Puri. Puri, city, the indweller of a city. And Purna, that which is full. Lest you think the indweller of a city is limited and confined. And Purusha, that which is full. So he sees this inaction, this stable, steady entity, this wonderful treasure, this jewel in the heart, which is still and steady, shining, never moves. Pure consciousness. And he who sees that in action, in nature, nature is always moving, Prakriti, but nature doesn't move itself. It requires that Purusha to move. And action, that is Prakriti itself, nature, in inaction, in the Purusha. He is wise among men and women, humankind. That means we have to go through life seeing, discerning this action and inaction, discerning what is Purusha, what belongs to Purusha, what belongs to Prakriti, what belongs to Prakriti, what belongs to Purusha. And he is a yogi accomplisher of everything. Now this has such a wide commentary, we won't deal with it here, we'll pick it up next week. But suffice to say that there are many confusing aspects that we have, and we make so many mistakes. There are some simple examples. Supposing you're in a train carriage and another train moves. Sometimes you might mistake, I am moving. Yeah? It's the other thing which is moving. See how we make a mistake about action and inaction. A child will look up in the sky and declare how the sun is migrating and moving. No, it's the cloud which is moving. It's your illusion. You think that you are still. You're not going anywhere. Well, I have to tell you that this earth is spinning at approximately, if you're at the equator anyway, 1,600 kilometers an hour. And here in Ireland, it'll be less, let's say 1,000. kilometers an hour. Do you feel that? When you go in your car, have you experienced 1,000 kilometers an hour? I didn't put it in seconds. That'll frighten you. And then this whole solar system is going around at the rate of something like 70,000 kilometers an hour. You add that up now, please. And we haven't finished. Because this whole galaxy is rotating at something like 792,000 kilometers an hour. And you think you're just sitting here standing still. It's your mistake. It doesn't look like that, doesn't it? You look out on the horizon and you see a ship on the horizon, and you see that it's standing still. Or you go up in an airplane, but it's moving. You go up in an airplane, and you don't feel as if you're moving, but you're moving at something like 300, 400 kilometers an hour. You see, you get the idea. Then if you go out the Earth's atmosphere, go to the space station there, it looks like everything just sitting still. So we make this mistake of perception. We mix up the action and the inaction. And we'll discuss that more next week. So, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.